With that, I'm gonna hand over to Sean, and then Mike and Harland will be here.
Thank you. Mike and Harland want to come over? So tell us a little bit about this deal, where you got it from, how you acquired it, what was your initial exit strategy?
Well, I'm Harland,
I'm Mike.
and we were a lot like a lot of you a number of years ago. We were in single family, did flips and did buy and holds, and that was our world, and we're very comfortable with it. But a few years ago, we said, let's get uncomfortable and move into multifamily. And Sean, we spent a lot of time studying that. We read books, and we went to conferences, and we met with each other and tried to figure it out. We went to Anthony's class actually a number of years ago with it, and we bought 128 units, and we're going to talk about that tonight.
Fantastic. So you did all this research before you dove into this, or was it
Yes.
in the deep end after you made
Both.
the deal? Both, okay. All right.
And we partnered with a third member from CFRI, and the three of us were general partners on the deal.
Okay.
So that was my book and that work.
So did you all have different roles?
Definitely different roles in that. Mike had more depth with it, and that's why we partnered with him. We were able to bring some things to him that he didn't have. And then as we operated it, took all three of us to work the general partners out of it.
Fantastic. Okay. So what was your original exit strategy?
So why don't we skip to the next slide here and take a look.
Plan was to purchase the property for $8.65 million, and then we had $500,000 in estimated repairs, and then estimated after a few years and all repairs, we were worth about $11.7 million, or 11.17.
And Sean, one of the things here that just scared the dickens out of me is those numbers. You and I are comfortable with maybe 100,000 or 200,000. We had to get a loan from the bank for about $6 million. We had to raise $2 million. That's different than going to a friend and getting a loan from a friend with that.
Just extra
it's
zeros,
a whole different ballgame.
It's just adding zeros.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it works out about $67,000 a unit at the time. So
Was that market value? Or do you think?
Yeah,
it was a little bit more than at the time.
we bought right.
So you bought it for the value added period, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
What was that? So next slide. So just like all of you, if you're into real estate, you have a plan as you're moving through real estate, and the plan follows the same things we did in multifamily and commercial. You got to go find the property. You got to pull the money together. You got to have a kind of business plan to make it work. You got to get it under contract. You got to do all the kind of things with it to make it work with that. And all of this is there. One of the key things in this is syndicating to get the money, because I didn't have $2 million.
I didn't either.
Yeah, so we had to go find 17 people to help us out. We shared it with them, and they decided to come with us as limited partners. We're the general partners. They have a limited liability with it, and we did all the work with it. And we raised. Take a look. I think the next slide here.
So the total raise was about $1.8 million. We closed November of 2019. We replaced the management. You can see one of the things that we did on renovations was improving the office. So fresh paint in there and just nice office area. But then we had 128 units to renovate. You don't do them all at one time. So we did have multiple crews, and they started with the vacant units. You don't necessarily want to push people out, but you have vacant units, that's where you start. You start with the easiest ones first.
So we're doing like you might on a single family: floors, paint, bathrooms, kitchens, lighting, to make the apartments better, so that the rent would go up on the apartments and the value of the property would go up.
Very good.
So we bought it in 2019 November. What happened in March of 2020? COVID hit. We're just 3 months into this thing, and COVID hit, and we are scared to death. What happens if people get sick? What happens if people die? On our staff, these 128 units, all the people that live there. What about us? we've got masks on, they got masks on, what are we gonna do? We get scared with that. And the other thing that happened was the court stopped forcing people or allowing people to get evicted. And therefore people said, if I'm not gonna get evicted, why should I pay rent? And therefore cash flow just, talk about not sleeping at night. So we got into this thing and it was difficult. Several folks in multifamily did fairly well during COVID with that. We had some major challenges. One of those is the picture.
Sewer lines.
We had sewer lines that were breaking on us, several of them, added expense. We had water lines that broke, added expense. We had roofs we didn't plan to put in for another 5, 6, 7 years after we sold it. They needed to be, the inspectors, the insurance said you gotta replace the roofs. There were just a number of surprises. Anybody out there have surprises when they bought a property? Yeah, this is buying it with other zeros on it here. So it was a challenge making it through this. We had a plan, and we worked that plan, and we're going to find out how it turned out here in just a bit.
All right.
Anything else on that one, Mike?
I think that pretty well covered it.
Okay.
So, one thing we did have control over was continuing the renovations. So, we couldn't control the evictions to the courts, but we could go in and continue to improve the property, replacing floors, carpets, paint, some appliances and cabinets. And that would allow us to increase the rents and bring the property values up. Then externally, Mike Bocanegra was watching what was also happening in the market with commercial properties and other apartments. So Harland,
And Mike's really good at seeing what the market is doing in Tallahassee and seeing these market cycles that we get into with buyers markets and sellers markets and that. And we came up here and we had made our goals, not at 5 years or 7 years, but by year 3, we had hit those goals of what the property was worth, what we'd get the return on it if we sold it. So we put it on the market. And what was that in?
fall of 22.
22. So we're 3 years into it. We put it on the market, and then we realized we had signed something back when we got the loan called a prepayment penalty. And in commercial loans, if many of them will be a prepayment penalty, they're set up in different ways. Ours was tied to the length of time we're in the loan. We had a 12-year loan. We're only 3 years into it. Not much time had gone by. And it's tied to the T-bill, the interest rate on the T-bill, because they want to make money and want to kind of lock that in what they're making. So while the interest rate stayed down, it was about $2 million of prepayment penalty if we sold it, which is kind of a bummer. But what happened at the end of 22 and the beginning of 23 with interest rates with the Fed? They actually started going back up again. Interest rates started going back up again. When interest rates went up, then the prepayment penalty went down. But when the interest rates went up, the value of the property actually go down, or the buyers were getting nervous because there's so much confusion in the market with that. So it was a challenge trying to sell it in 22 and 23, but
we did find a buyer in 23, and it worked out, and we were able to offset that prepayment penalty, and worked out well. So we move on to the next one and see how it turned out. So we sold it for $13 million. You remember what we had planned to sell it at? Right, a little over 11. So that you can see where that more than offset $2 million for the prepayment penalty. We also had higher rehab costs, and but you can see that after we sold it and paid back all the investors for their initial investment, we still had a profit of about $1.3 million to split between the general partners and the limited partners. So at the end of the day, it worked out.
It worked out fine. Not as good as we hoped it would. We got a base hit off of this one. It worked out fine. Notice in there, what did we expect our expenses to be on capital expenses? About $500,000. Notice how much we spent. About 3 times that. That ever happened to any of you? Yeah. It happened to us with a lot more zeros on it there, but it turned out well and we made it through it and did well with it. So, a couple of lessons learned here, Sean. We learned in this if we can with the next line.
Number one, get a good education. And we were grateful to be able to go through Anthony's boot camp. I'd done it back in Georgia when I was up there. And my mind was not ready for the multifamily, but at least planted the seed. And then when I got down to CFRI, and then I went through the boot camp again, Harland and I went through it at the same time, and it was, after that point, we ended up partnering together. And then with Mike Bocanegra, we went out and found the property. So the education is very valuable. It's like Harland said, you're adding zeros, but you also add zeros to the returns. And let's see, then you also want to have sufficient reserves. We had the reserves that we were told we needed, but we also could have used sufficiently more. So.
Yeah, we kind of blew through that with COVID and blew through that with our expenses going up on renovations. One of the key things here is a solid team. To have a solid team. The three of us as general partners, we trusted each other, we knew each other, we had different roles to play, and we balanced each other out on that. Excellent lawyers, attorneys. There are some out there. And that's really key. An excellent accountant, the 17 private investors that we had with us in the syndication. So get a good team together. That's really something we learned is a key to this. And one other was Mike Bocanegra's statement to us when we partnered with him. He says, we're going to be transparent totally with our investors on this thing, all the way through. Good, bad, or ugly, we're going to tell them. We're not going to hide anything. And that probably made this property work well as communicating with our investors month after month after month as things were going well, as we made our progress, but also when things were really in deep stuff.
Did all your investors know, were they okay with you getting out earlier than May planned?
Yes. Yeah, we talked to the investors along the way, and some of them, earlier on, they weren't too crazy about selling it with a prepayment penalty, but when the interest rates continued to go up and the prepayment penalty got smaller at that point, it just converged for everybody who was saying, yeah, go ahead and sell it.
Risk reward was worth it for them.
Right.
Okay.
So we're finished up here, Sean, with this one. Just some contact information here. We'd love to answer any questions. And anybody that's just thinking about multifamily, we're glad to talk to you about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Got time for two questions. Anybody in the audience have anything?
Are you able to reveal the area this property was in, part one and part two? If someone read the fine print, are there loans, maybe higher interest that don't have a prepayment penalty?
Everything's negotiable with banks and that. They may say no, but you can negotiate. So there are lots of different ways to do prepayment penalty, and we were in Tallahassee with this one.
How was the gross profit treated? Was that divided by 3 or 2? And how was that taxed based on capital gains or ordinary income?
The taxation was complicated, and it was split based on the operating agreement that our SEC attorney drew up. So there was a certain percentage first that went to limited partners. They had to get their preferred return before the general partners got their return. And then anything above that would be...
We had a split. We agreed to it ahead of time. So
Right.
with that, and these were, at that point, they're mostly long-term gain for those that were in the groups.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, IRA investors, for them, they had no taxes.
All right, give it up for Mike and Harland.
Thank you, guys. Sorry, we're rushing through things here. All right, I need to, real quick, I want to introduce our speaker tonight, and we're going to move straight into that. I heard a couple of phones dingling in the